Good morning, good afternoon, good night, good evening, whatever time you're watching this. Thank you so much for tuning in to the very first episode of Not Your Grandma's Advice. I am Nova. Many of you may know me as Markia, but I am beyond excited and a little nervous to be here with you today, I'll be honest. Starting NYGA is something that I've dreamt about for a couple years now, but I was always so scared because, one, I'm 22, I'll be 23 today. Well, just turned 23, I guess. Yay! But I don't have the authority to kind of tell anybody what to do or to really be giving anybody advice either, as I'm still experiencing life myself. But what I want NYGA to really do is make us feel less alone. I want to open the conversations to those taboo topics that we're told are not socially acceptable to talk about. I want us to feel more confident. And when I say us, I definitely mean that this growing generation, but Not Your Grandma's Advice is for every generation, because every generation can use a boost in confidence, right? Right. But today's first episode, because I know so many of you are wondering, actually stems from the nerves that I felt regarding starting the podcast. So I decided a couple months ago, actually, that I was going to stop being so scared and I was going to go ahead and start this podcast, even though I had always been so scared to and nervous. I said that I was going to go ahead and do it because it's something that made me happy, and it's something that I felt could help other people feel less alone as well. I've always been one to have those hard conversations and talk about the things that aren't necessarily socially acceptable. So I figured if I can make those around me feel more comfortable talking about what needs to be talked about, why can't I do that for those who aren't fortunate enough to be graced in my private circle? So here we are, the first episode of Not Your Grandma's Advice. So sit back, relax, and just listen. So let's go ahead and get into the first episode in our topic, okay? So I went through a whole range of ideas that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about implicit bias. I wanted to talk about imposter syndrome. I wanted to talk about mental health in the Black community. And those are all things that are really important to talk about, and we will probably eventually talk about here on this podcast. But the first episode is going to be kind of like a warm-up, kind of something that I needed to realize recently, and something that I hope other people have realized, or I can help them realize with this podcast. But it starts with a story. A couple weeks ago, last month really, I was driving to work, and those of you that know me personally, I'm not like the best driver. Like, I'm not a NASCAR driver or anything, but I get from point A to point B. But if there are curves in between point A and point B, a curb may get hit from time to time, no harm, no foul. And I noticed that whenever I did something on the road that was kind of like a oopsie, I would look in my rear view mirror. You know how you guys can like look behind you and you kind of see in the windshield of the person behind you, you can like see them. Yeah, so I would typically look in my rear view mirror to see if they look like they saw my whoopsie, basically. And I was driving to work one day and I was rubbing my eye. It's early in the morning, I'm tired, and I swerve a little bit, hit the curb a little bit, and I was like, OMG, the person behind me probably thinks I look so drunk. Like, let me get it together. I looked behind me, there was no one there. And I was like, that's so embarrassing. Why? why is it embarrassing if there's no one there? And I think the thing that I found embarrassing in that moment was, one, the fact that I was even looking behind me to see if anybody saw my whoopsie, but also even more embarrassing that I was expecting someone to judge me, and in reality there was no one there, and I know y'all are probably gonna say like she's reaching for what I'm about to say, but I think at least me and maybe a lot of us do that in our personal lives as well. Okay? Hear me out, friends. How many of you are scared or feel shame or embarrassment for doing something that you think other people are going to perceive as odd or weird or socially unacceptable, right? Starting this podcast was something that I had all those fears about. I definitely thought about the people that I went to middle school with, and the people that I went to high school with, the people that I went to college with, people at my job. I thought about all the people in my personal life that didn't really know me personally enough to cheer for me. I thought about all those people that I've interacted with throughout my life and how they were going to perceive me, how they were going to think about this podcast, what they were going to say. And I know there's probably going to be some people out there that are like, why is she starting a podcast? Like, she's not a pro on anything. Her voice is annoying. There are some people who might not understand why I started it. And that doesn't mean that I should just not, because I'm scared of what other people are going to say. I think that's embarrassing. It's not embarrassing being caught doing something that you love if it's no harm to anyone and no harm to yourself. Why would it be embarrassing, right? I think it's embarrassing to live your life for the sake of the acceptance of others. We are too grown now. Life is so short. We only get one life. We get one body. We get one experience. Why would you not take full advantage of it simply because someone else might have something negative to say about it, right? I think that's embarrassing. So I know you guys are probably gonna think, girl, ain't no way you got this whole episode idea because you're a bad driver. But in reality, I act like that in a lot of different parts of my life, and it's not just the podcast, and it's not just my driving. Some of you follow me on TikTok or Instagram, the videos that I post. I'm not trying to be a content creator. I just enjoy sharing parts of my life. There are people who are probably like, no one cares what she's wearing. Like, she's a teacher. No one cares what she's doing today. No one cares about the dates her and her man went on. Like, it's not about who cares. It's about what makes you happy. So I am making a pledge right here that this podcast is going to be all about us doing the work. We are going to support each other. We are going to uplift each other. We are going to create a positive environment for growth. In this first episode, though it may be short, I'm setting some ground rules for how we're going to interact with each other, okay? Life is too short and too cruel for us to continue judging each other for what we find enjoyable. So, for the haters that I may or may not have already, thank you for inspiring this episode, because I had to grow from thinking about other people's validation. And to those that tuned in to support, thank you. This is probably the best birthday present I could have ever given myself. And getting several people to view my very first episode and share my first episode would be an even greater gift. If no one supports you, know that I support you. Because if you're not hurting yourself and if you're not hurting anyone else, enjoy it. Enjoy life. Because we're about to do some real work in this podcast. I want you guys to go to my Instagram, go to my TikTok, go to my Facebook, whatever you guys follow me on. And I want you guys to talk about how you felt about this first podcast episode. If it made you feel anything, if you also went through that whole embarrassment thing that I also went through, or if you can't relate and you realize that you're maybe one of the ones that are judging others, right? I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. I cannot wait for our next full length episode. And I can't wait to continue doing the work with you guys. Okay? So, in the meantime, until next time, which will be every last Friday of the month, I want to say that I'm proud of you. I love you. And let's continue to do the work together. Okay? This has been Not Your Grandma's Advice, episode 1. Bye.